This is the Dave Elliott Show.
Are you able to cease thinking on command?
We just want to hear the truth.
On 98.9 WGUF, Naples FM Talk.
Let me give you one piece of advice. Be honest. He knows more than you can imagine.
There's a 68.71% chance you're right.
4:08 on the Dave Elliott Show live here at Shula's Steakhouse this afternoon with Don Farmer, columnist for the Naples Daily News, former White House correspondent for ABC News, and our good friend Dr. Peter Bergeson, professor of political science and public policy at Florida Gulf Coast University. And I want to add to the conversation right now Bob Weiner, who you know from this program and his many appearances here, formerly with the White House as the Drug Czar's public affairs director, worked for John Conyers, Charles Rangel, Claude Pepper, Ed Koch, Senator Kennedy. You kind of get the idea. And a lot more besides. Plus, he was director of the Daily Press Briefing Room in the 2008 Democratic National Convention in Denver. I think that should actually be the 2012, Bob.
Both.
Oh, both.
And you almost said I worked for Don Farmer because I've actually known Don Farmer. We've done a lot together in the past. Hi, Don.
How you doing?
I'm good.
I guess you're a happy camper, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
let me just
I am
ask
happy. See, there, Don's moving back into his interview mode.
Yeah, he is.
I am a happy camper today. I think it's a very good day for America. The bottom line is when you see that the first African-American president in the history of the country is reelected and the country saw fit to do that, it does make you feel good. We have really created history that will now go down forever and ever.
Well, let me ask you. I started off the show in the last hour by asking Don and Peter what happened, and I want to ask you what went right yesterday or over the campaign. You were in on all the strategy calls.
Well, I was. I had the privilege, Don, believe it or not, I've actually stayed at this, and I was on all the message calls, as Dave knows, and I ran the press briefing room at this year's convention, and I'm credentialed because of op-eds that I do now these days, and radio TV like Dave's August show.
Yeah.
I'm credentialed into all of the White House press conferences and briefings.
So what went right?
So what went right is the president from the beginning and his team, Axelrod and Pluff and the like, did the ads that defined Romney from the beginning. Then we had a flawless Democratic National Convention. Romney had a horrific one with Eastwood staring at chairs and a non-message, amazingly unorganized from their point of view. And then Romney just defined himself as of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich. And that actually is what got him at the end, I'm convinced, Dave. When he talked about real change, he meant tax cuts for the rich, drilling for oil, stop women's choice, oppose equal pay, self-deportation, students borrow from your parents, bankruptcy is allowed when you repeal Obamacare because half of all bankruptcies are health care, and end Wall Street reforms. That's not a platform that the American people wanted, and we were able to define that and talk about the fact that Obama rescued GM, and the lying ads that Romney did in Ohio backfired totally. The voter suppression backfired totally on him. It became a message and a cause to actually vote. And so Obama and then killed bin Laden, and no new wars, the Powell endorsement, the Bloomberg endorsement, and the exclamation point at the end of Sandy, which showed that for all Romney saying we can't be bipartisan, there we were being bipartisan with his keynote speaker at his convention.
What do you make of Chris?
It really worked quite well.
What do you make of Chris Matthews last night saying, "Thank God we had Sandy"? Did you hear about this on MSNBC?
Well, I think that's kind of a gross statement. I think nobody wants to opportunize a storm. But it did show the need for government, which deflated one of Romney's biggest arguments. Then another thing came out. Wants to privatize FEMA, send it to the states, and then ultimately privatize it all together and get rid of it. And then had his latest and last contortion was having to get out of that one, same as he tried to get out of choice and out of tax breaks for the rich. And it was a mess. It was a total mess that people got sick of.
Okay, but that you're telling me what went wrong with Romney. I'm kind of wanting to know what went right with the Obama team. What do you think the Obama team did right?
From the convention to the issues, to defining Romney in the beginning, to, as I said, to the economy actually starting to improve, creating 5 million jobs, defusing the argument that he didn't because the $800,000 a month that we were losing at the beginning got reversed, and moving things along and trying to create a fairness His platform, Romney kept saying we have no issues. We had great issues. The American people liked them. They liked Sotomayor as Supreme Court Justice. They liked giving women choice. They like equal pay for women. The gender gap turned out to be 10 points, and that was something that was a fatal flaw. The Latino issues, Romney's self-deportation, was an absolutely fatal flaw, losing the Hispanics by 40 points, whereas we recognize that the demographics are changing in the United States.
All right, I want to ask you about moving forward. Last night in his acceptance speech, he and Romney said basically the same things. We need to get off this partisan thing. We need to start crossing the aisle and joining hands and doing what we need to do to fix what's broken in this country. And Obama then pledged to meet with Romney soon to talk to him about the issues. Do you really think that's going to happen? And if so, do you know when?
Well, Dave, it happens every new presidency. This is nothing new, and, we've all been around the block, Don, right, Don? So this happens every presidency, Clinton, Bush. I mean, all of it. It always happens. They all come in. It becomes a big dramatic thing, and they meet, and they pledge to work together.
Well, you're right. They usually meet at the White House, and they have coffee, and their wives in the other room and in the other wing, and have martinis. No, but when it comes down to sitting down and trying to be bipartisan, I'm afraid that the bipartisanship is so hard because the guys in power, they don't want to give anything, and the guys who aren't in power can't really get anything, and so it's gridlock, and I don't know how they're going to get around that.
That's what the concern.
I have a question for you. Let me ask you.
Go ahead, Peter.
Do you see President Obama appointing a Republican to one of the top cabinet positions, say, for instance, Secretary of Treasury, to address the issue of the economy and try to broker a deal with the House?
Hey, Christie for FEMA.
Well, we're not talking about FEMA, but
no, that's a great question, though. I mean, if he's truly bipartisan, wouldn't he want to try to do that, to at least stand an olive branch that way?
He did it with
he brought Gates. With the Secretary of Transportation. He brought him in from Republicans. That's actually another thing that happens all the time. But I do want to get to the point of these guys don't want to give each other anything. I was really distressed at Boehner's news conference. He uses all these words, common bond, and Obama used common ground. Obama has these meetings and gives and has these Simpson Bowles kinds of meetings and the grand bargain. Boehner, he said, but you can't, I want to do it and we'll get revenue, but not if you take tax breaks away from, everything but the one thing that actually the American people supported by 65 to 35, which was reduced tax breaks for the rich. Everything but the one thing the Democrats want. That's not compromise, and that was Boehner's news conference today. Last night on Sky News Worldwide, I debated Armstrong Williams, who said, well, the Republicans still control the House, when I'm saying, Obama just talked about compromise. And they don't mean it. The Republicans still to this moment don't mean it.
You're smart enough and savvy enough, especially in this world we're discussing, more so than I, but you know that when Harry Reid says, yes, in his little soft voice, yes, we need to be bipartisan, but we insist we will not accept anything that doesn't raise taxes on the rich. Okay, well then what's the next conversation about? That's the problem.
That's the point of no give by us. But why? There was a guy. Maybe there is an answer. We want over $250,000, but we're willing to take over $1 million. That was Pelosi's offer of compromise from the beginning. Why shouldn't we? If you look at those charts that show the separation of income over the last 30 years, it's horrible. It's why we are depleting. It's why we're losing income. It's why we have a debt. There are things that should be compromised and things that shouldn't. We've got to stop the military spending that, as President Obama said, put us spending more than the top 10 countries combined. We've got to stop the fact that use the money from leaving Afghanistan to Iraq, and that's a budget saver. But what Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex is going to pin us down and keep us in our horrible debt.
That's yesterday. What about the
fiscal? What do you mean that's yesterday?
Well, General Eisenhower has been out of office for about 50 years.
But his military-industrial complex is still in operation to this moment.
But tomorrow or this afternoon, we want to look at the fiscal cliff. What do you see as a compromise in addressing the fiscal cliff?
And I only have about a minute left here, Bob.
Well, the answer is Obama's plan to use the war funding for infrastructure. That's a way to still not add money to the deficit, But in addition, you've got to compromise. There's got to be a compromise on taxes. And I don't want to see entitlements beaten back, by the way. I don't want to see this done on the backs of seniors. I think that's outrageous when seniors have paid into Social Security and it's solvent for 30 years and a bank would never be able to tell you they use their money for other purposes. Seniors paid that money, and Medicare's been made more solvent for another 10 years by Obamacare, and the Republicans tried to block that and repeal it. Well, it won't be repealed, so even Medicare is more secure now. So the answer is not steal from Medicare and steal from Social Security. The answer is take it from the wars and take it from tax breaks for the rich that you would otherwise be giving, and then bring us back into the kind of 23 million jobs that Bill Clinton created.
All right, well, that's going to have to do it. We just blast through these segments like with no time left whatsoever, and I can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes out to be here today. I know you're scrambling around up there in D.C. I hope to see you soon, Bob. Thanks again for coming on with us today.
Thanks. Great to see you. Great to talk to you.
You bet. Bob Weiner there from Weiner and Associates in D.C.